Pedro Pascal has publicly acknowledged dealing with anxiety throughout his career, presenting it as both a personal challenge and a defining part of his character. Pascal has stated that his anxiety began in childhood and has followed him into adulthood, shaping how he navigates both personal life and professional environments. In a July 2025 Men's Health interview, he explained that anxiety is part of what makes me, me, and revealed that during the pandemic summer of 2020, he made a conscious decision to reach out to friends and loved ones rather than retreat into isolation, a coping strategy meant to break the cycle of negative thoughts and self-imposed withdrawal. In the entertainment industry, where public scrutiny and high-pressure work environments are constant, mental health disclosures can serve multiple purposes. For some, it builds relatability and trust with fans, fostering a perception of authenticity. However, critics argue that in Pascal's case, repeated references to anxiety can also operate as an anxiety excuse, a subtle yet effective shield that reframes potentially questionable behavior, whether in interviews or on set, as a byproduct of a medical condition rather than a lapse in professionalism. This perception is amplified by the timing of these disclosures. When conversations about his on-set behavior or public interactions surface, particularly those that spark online debate, the anxiety narrative often reemerges in coverage, shifting focus from accountability to empathy. Supporters may interpret moments of awkwardness, overfamiliarity, or irritability as understandable symptoms of a mental health struggle, while detractors see it as a calculated way to deflect criticism. This dual function makes anxiety both a deeply personal reality for Pascal and a powerful public relations tool in shaping how he is perceived during controversies. Reports and industry accounts have surfaced describing Pascal as being touchy on set. In industry language, being described as touchy means engaging in physical gestures toward colleagues that can be interpreted as overly familiar or unnecessary in a professional setting. These gestures include actions such as placing hands on another person's arm, shoulder, or torso. In Pedro Pascal's case, multiple accounts and recordings have documented such behavior. One highly publicized example occurred during the 2025 Fantastic Four red carpet. Footage showed Pascal repeatedly placing his hands on the stomach of his pregnant co-star Vanessa Kirby and leaning close during interviews. Kirby later clarified publicly that she viewed the interaction as friendly and supportive. However, the footage circulated widely online and was debated independently of her statement. This illustrates a dynamic in which intent and reception differ. The participant may accept the gesture, but external audiences may evaluate it according to broader cultural standards of boundary awareness. Since the Me Too era, physical familiarity at press events or on set has been subject to increased scrutiny. Audiences and critics now examine whether repeated contact respects professional norms of personal space. For Pascal, supporters interpreted the behavior as warmth, while critics identified a lack of discipline in maintaining boundaries. The concept of a woke shield refers to the informal protection certain public figures receive from criticism because of their alignment with progressive social causes. It describes how favorable coverage, supportive fan bases, and industry alliances can reduce or redirect backlash. Pedro Pascal has consistently positioned himself in support of causes such as LGBTQ+ rights, immigrant protections, and gender equality. He has also publicly criticized high-profile figures whose positions oppose these causes. This positioning associates him with values that are widely shared by entertainment media outlets and by large online fan communities. As a result, when criticism emerges, reporting often emphasizes context or mitigating factors rather than focusing exclusively on the criticism. For example, coverage of the red carpet footage with Vanessa Kirby highlighted Kirby's defense of Pascal and referenced his established advocacy work. This shaped the dominant narrative into one of misunderstanding rather than misconduct. The effect of the woke shield is not to eliminate scrutiny, but to alter its intensity and trajectory. Criticism may circulate on social media, but traditional media coverage frequently softens it. Studios and sponsors, in turn, may view the softened coverage as evidence that professional risk is limited, allowing Pascal to maintain roles and endorsements without disruption. The canceled versus protected dynamic highlights the uneven way public figures face consequences for controversy. In entertainment, being canceled typically means losing acting roles, sponsorships, or public support after a scandal, sometimes based on a single viral incident. Being protected means avoiding these consequences, often due to loyal fans, strong industry connections, or favorable press coverage. Despite viral criticism over his red carpet behavior and online debates about his boundaries, Pedro Pascal has faced no loss of roles or public endorsements. He remains attached to major projects such as The Last of Us Season 2 and Marvel's Fantastic Four, with additional work already lined up. Critics argue that his political alignment, combined with his popularity and relationships within Hollywood, insulates him from repercussions that might derail another actor's career under similar circumstances. This disparity reinforces the idea that certain public figures operate under a different standard of accountability, where industry value and media framing outweigh public outrage. The shift from daddy to creep reflects a major change in how Pedro Pascal is perceived online and in the media. For years, Pascal was embraced by fans as Internet Daddy, a playful label used to describe older male celebrities seen as attractive, confident, and protective. This image was fueled by his warm interactions with fans, humorous interviews, and charismatic screen presence in roles like The Mandalorian and The Last of Us. However, recent viral moments, particularly his close physical gestures toward female co-stars, have caused some of that charm to be reinterpreted in a more negative light. Social media commentary shifted, with certain fans and critics framing these behaviors as overfamiliar or crossing into inappropriate territory. This kind of perception shift can happen quickly online, where meme culture and public sentiment turn admiration into skepticism almost overnight. Once a celebrity's safe persona is questioned, every new public appearance is scrutinized for signs that support the new narrative, potentially impacting how audiences, casting directors, and brands choose to associate with them. Casting fatigue occurs when audiences and industry professionals become oversaturated with a particular actor's presence in major projects. Pedro Pascal's career has accelerated rapidly in recent years, placing him in a string of high-profile roles with little gap between them. From Game of Thrones to The Mandalorian, The Last of Us, Fantastic Four, and upcoming projects like Materialists and Eddington, his visibility has been near constant. While this momentum can boost star power, it also risks diminishing audience excitement. Viewers may start to feel they are seeing the same personality in every role, regardless of character. In some cases, this repetition can lead to typecasting, where an actor becomes closely associated with a certain style or archetype, making it harder for audiences to accept them in different genres or character types. For studios, overexposure can also create marketing challenges, as the novelty of casting a popular name begins to fade, and new releases struggle to stand out in a crowded media landscape. A press tour meltdown refers to negative moments during promotional campaigns that overshadow the project being promoted. Press tours require actors to participate in back-to-back interviews, photo calls, and public appearances, often across multiple countries in a short time. This schedule is physically exhausting and can be mentally draining, especially for someone who has spoken openly about living with anxiety. In Pedro Pascal's case, certain press events have produced viral clips where he appears irritable, distracted, or overly blunt in his responses. While some fans interpret these moments as signs of authenticity or humor, detractors see them as lapses in professionalism that clash with the upbeat promotional tone studios expect. The risk with such incidents is that they can become the focal point of media coverage, shifting attention from the film or show to the actor's behavior. In today's social media environment, even a few seconds of awkward interaction can be clipped, shared, and dissected thousands of times, amplifying the negative impression far beyond the original setting. A media cover-up in this context refers to selective reporting or framing by entertainment outlets to protect a public figure's reputation. In Pedro Pascal's case, stories about his behavior, such as the viral red carpet interactions with Vanessa Kirby, are often presented with a sympathetic angle. Coverage frequently highlights Kirby's defense of him and references his anxiety as an explanation, rather than centering the criticisms themselves. Outlets with favorable relationships to Pascal or those aligned with his political and social stances may choose to downplay negative elements, omit certain details, or frame the controversy as overblown. This selective reporting shapes the narrative for the general public, who may only see the softened version of events. In some cases, the backlash itself is portrayed as ideologically motivated or the work of online trolls, which shifts focus away from the substance of the criticism. By steering the conversation toward empathy and away from accountability, this kind of media handling can help preserve an actor's marketability and industry standing even during periods of public scrutiny. Pedro Pascal's current position in Hollywood can best be described as untouchable. Despite public controversies, viral criticism, and ongoing online debates, his career momentum has only grown. He remains attached to high-profile projects across television and film, continues to receive glowing coverage from major outlets, and enjoys a fiercely loyal fan base. This combination of star power, political alignment, and industry relationships has created a level of insulation that most actors never achieve. However, Hollywood's history shows that such protection is rarely permanent. Public sentiment can shift, media allies can turn, and reputations can erode faster than they're built. For now, Pascal stands as one of the most untouchable figures in the industry, at least for now. The double standard of accountability in Hollywood creates long-term instability for actors like Pedro Pascal. In Hollywood, reputational risk is managed differently depending on an actor's market value, public image, and political alignment. When an actor is profitable and aligns with dominant narratives, negative incidents are often treated as isolated or minimized. When an actor is considered less valuable or misaligned, similar incidents can escalate into career-ending controversies. Pedro Pascal's continued insulation from serious consequences illustrates how this system works in practice. However, the same system is inherently unstable. Market value can decline with a single box office failure, and political alignments can shift as cultural priorities evolve. This means that even actors who appear untouchable may eventually find themselves vulnerable once their protective factors weaken. The cycle of overexposure magnifies every public misstep. An actor with sustained visibility, like Pedro Pascal, is constantly present in press cycles, promotional tours, and social media conversations. The more visible he becomes, the lower the margin of error for his public behavior. Every red carpet appearance, interview clip, or candid interaction has the potential to be recorded, dissected, and shared. Over time, this cycle can transform minor lapses into defining narratives. In Pascal's case, the same exposure that made him a beloved cultural figure also ensures that each controversial moment circulates widely, feeding into debates about his boundaries, professionalism, and authenticity. Industry reliance on Pascal increases both opportunity and pressure. Studios and streaming platforms rely on established stars to anchor expensive projects. With franchises like The Mandalorian, The Last of Us, and Fantastic Four, Pascal has become a financial linchpin for multiple studios. This dependence creates more opportunities, but also adds pressure. Production delays, promotional controversies, or audience backlash tied to a lead actor can jeopardize multi-million-dollar investments. As reliance on Pascal grows, the stakes of his behavior rise proportionally. Any sustained shift in public sentiment could therefore trigger a sharp reevaluation of his casting prospects by studios seeking to protect their investments. The concept of reputation collapse explains why protective barriers often fail suddenly. Reputation collapse refers to a rapid decline in public or industry standing that happens when protective factors, such as favorable media framing or loyal fan bases, are overwhelmed by cumulative controversy. In Hollywood, collapses often occur after years of smaller incidents that seemed inconsequential at the time. Once momentum turns, every past controversy is reinterpreted through a harsher lens. For Pascal, this means that incidents currently softened by media coverage or defended by fans could resurface later as evidence of a long-standing pattern. What is dismissed today as minor or overblown can become tomorrow's central narrative if the protective shield weakens. Pedro Pascal's trajectory demonstrates the balance between cultural alignment and personal risk. His current career strength relies on three interconnected elements: political and cultural alignment with progressive causes, continued financial reliability for studios, and a loyal fan base that reshapes controversies into narratives of relatability or misunderstanding. These elements work together to shield him from the immediate consequences that have derailed other actors, yet each element carries its own risks. Cultural alignment can backfire if public opinion shifts. Financial reliability can vanish with a single poorly performing project, and fan loyalty can erode quickly once perception changes. This balance is what makes Pascal's position powerful in the short term but volatile in the long term. Case comparisons highlight the volatility of protection in Hollywood. Other actors once considered untouchable provide clear examples of how quickly reputations can shift. Johnny Depp was long regarded as one of the most bankable stars in Hollywood, but a combination of legal disputes and public accusations led to widespread professional setbacks, including his removal from major franchises like Fantastic Beasts. Will Smith maintained decades of favorable press until the 2022 Oscars incident, one moment that reversed years of cultivated reputation and triggered lost roles, paused projects, and lasting debate over his legacy. These examples show that protective status is conditional. As long as the industry perceives a star as an asset, controversies are managed. But once profitability or public image declines, the same system can enforce sudden distance. For Pedro Pascal, whose protective factors resemble those of these former stars, the risk lies not in one isolated controversy, but in the potential for a single event to unlock years of accumulated criticism. Upcoming projects amplify the stakes for Pascal's image. Pedro Pascal is tied to high-profile franchises and films, each with its own risks. In The Last of Us Season 2, the adaptation must balance faithful storytelling with audience expectations. Any missteps could redirect fan frustration toward the lead actor. Fantastic Four places him at the center of one of Marvel's most scrutinized reboots. Marvel's declining box office performance in recent years heightens the pressure for success, and lead actors often absorb blame when projects underperform. Additionally, Pascal's work in independent films such as Materialists and Eddington requires him to maintain credibility with critics and festival audiences. A decline in reputation could jeopardize critical reception of these projects, making them harder to market and diminishing their cultural impact. The ticking time bomb framework applies because each factor has a breaking point. Pedro Pascal's career momentum rests on a system of protections: industry reliance, cultural alignment, media framing, and fan loyalty. Each factor functions as a barrier against consequences, but none are permanent. If one weakens, such as a major project failing financially or fans reframing his behavior, the others may not be strong enough to sustain his insulation. When barriers collapse simultaneously, the result is rapid reputational decline, a hallmark of Hollywood's ticking time bomb careers. For Pascal, the question is not whether controversies exist, but how long the protective mechanisms can contain them before a shift in public perception changes the trajectory of his career. And if this is what's happening with Pedro Pascal, just imagine how many other Hollywood favorites are quietly skating by under the same protection. Behind the glossy interviews and curated social media posts, there are stories the public isn't meant to see, patterns that repeat, connections that protect, and moments that never make it into the headlines. The deeper you look, the clearer it gets, and the names you'll hear next might completely change the way you see your favorite stars. Stick around, because the next breakdown will pull back the curtain even further, and once you see it, you can't unsee it.